name is Jacob Yandle, and I'm a first-year painter here in the 2D department. I started out at Middle Tennessee State University in Tennessee. That's just a little bit under Nashville, and that's where I was born and raised, and I ended up going to school there just because it was close. But when I enrolled in art classes there, I wasn't initially an art major. I started out in audio production, but the more I got into the classes, it felt like the right path for me, both because I enjoyed creating art my entire life, but this sort of gave me an avenue to be creative, both as somebody who enjoys making things with his hands and then also as an entrepreneur, and sort of in a scholarly sense with critical analysis. And as I got to the end of my BFA, I sort of started driving myself more towards that critical analysis part of making art and questioning the materials more than worrying about what I was creating. And that kind of became irrelevant in these first few images I'm going to show you. This first one was just recently made, and about last year there was this big shift for me where I went from trying to make really large pieces that would take me somewhere around like a couple weeks to create to making these like hour studies and sort of using these as a basis for further analysis and creation, and also just for like immediate chaotic feeling, which I think is sort of painting's strong suit. Because when I'm working in other mediums, I don't feel that need for it to be more like, I guess, epic in a sense. But with the palette knife and painting, I got this really good feeling of like, here's my colors. Now I can kind of explore how they're meshing together and what they're saying to each other. And in this image, I felt really good about that because I have the two figures in this field with these like blotched out white spots and like just these lines of red. And I think it kind of opens up that sense of mystery and sort of dissociation with the figures, because you don't really know who they are and you don't know where they're at, and you can only get like these really basic symbols, I guess, for nature. That one's a bit on the like quicker side. I think that one took me about an hour, but I really like how it came out compositionally, even if I didn't have really anything in mind for it. On this next image, I was going much more abstract and pushing the idea of like, how are these colors playing together? And I can't even really remember what the original image was for this, but what I liked so much about it when I put it up in my BFA thesis show was that everybody kind of had an idea of what it was for themselves. And there was like 5 or 6 different ideas kind of going around the room about what it was. And it was strange because it was on a wall and it's only about an 8x10 canvas, but over the other pieces that I put, this one dominated a lot of space because of that heavy weight of like the black and the dark blue. I really want to push these kind of ideas further when it comes specifically to my painting, because I think the idea of the figure became sort of redundant to me in a sense, where I kind of started questioning, where is the figure if it's not a realistic figure? Like some of my older work, even though it wasn't really realism, it was striving to be that. And then in this series, I sort of stepped away from that. I'm like, well, I want to do as little as I can of the figure and discuss the figure through the setting. And so this one kind of took that on in the most extreme way, where it feels figurative to me. I think of it as like a house on fire personally, but I don't really remember what it was. So I think it kind of has that discussion in my mind of like, well, who owns the house? Or like, where are we? And like, are they okay? These kind of pieces that give you like that immediate like feeling of like, I need to know where I am and what I'm doing right now, or I'm in danger. I really like that when it comes to painting, like, or really in any 2D form. It kind of differs as it goes. But in this next piece, it was a bit more focused on the idea of like, how can I push the feelings of the figure by doing as little to them as possible. And this piece is of a funeral procession, and it's sort of just these people standing around a casket, and the casket's fully painted, and the background is fully painted, and it's dim, and like you could tell like it's either raining or it has rained. Just that like very basic setup for like what a funeral would be like, I guess, in a connotative sense. But the thing I enjoyed so much about this painting was that I decided not to paint the figures at all and only give them their basic gestures of having their face down. And the reason I did this, or at least the reason I tried to tell myself, is that I wanted it to be more about that feeling you get where you're not yourself when you're at something like a funeral and you're so focused on somebody else, somebody else's story or their condition, that you almost stop being like your own self. Like you're sort of so deeply like focused on something that you almost forget that you have hands in a sense. So I really enjoyed the way this one kind of captured that, and I feel when I show it off, like that's sort of the same sense. Like people get that either immediately or like after I talk to them a bit, they're like, I totally see that, and that's how I feel when I go to those events. And I guess it's important to say that when I was focusing on these first couple pieces, it was for a thesis show, and my idea was moments that sort of take you away. Like this one was like the basis for the whole idea of what are these moments in people's lives where they either don't matter or they become part of the furniture of the situation. And in his next piece, it also was in this series, but it kind of went in a different direction because I stopped focusing so much on these like moments that are so powerful that they erase us, and I started focusing on the idea of like these moments that are so powerful that they sort of mold us. So this one I took from the idea of like when we were trick-or-treating as kids and sort of those American traditions that we can all kind of get along with and like have a memory of it. And this one's just it was a really quick image that I just wanted to paint like some kids and make it like as uncontroversial as possible, I guess is the best way to put it. It was supposed to be something that like your grandma would hang in her house. Like it doesn't bother anybody. You almost wouldn't notice it if you passed by it, but it becomes so important to you if you have something attached to it. So that idea of like, at least in painting, of like having people look at my image and not think about the image but think about their own lives became an interesting avenue for me to create. And that's why I started going in this direction of like I want to paint things quicker and more immediate. I don't want to take a lot of time making things, because with pieces like this next one where I did spend a little bit more time making it, I think I spent about a week on this piece, I was doing more of like trying to get that same idea of like how do I narrate a figure and how do I bring in that sense of surrealism that I enjoy and iconography and make these static images that you sort of start to make the story for, I guess, yourself, which again seems a bit like, well, obviously that's what a painting does, but that's why I think I moved away from this, was that it didn't feel like I was doing anything interesting or innovative in the same sense that doing those palette knife paintings allowed me to do. But I still enjoy this kind of work, and I actually still have this painting hanging up because I really enjoyed sort of that like sculpturally molding of forms with light. And I feel like whenever I think about where I want my work to go, I want to blend these ideas of like the more immediate reactions and then these more slowly thought out pieces where I start to like explore how does the light affect your vision of this, how does position and scale like start to push your narrative of what you're seeing. This next one is sort of an interesting mix of that because I tried to do exactly that, where I focused on doing the figure and using light to mold how the figure was and like how are they standing and what are their like relationships to each other. And then like it's hard to tell in this image. It's much simpler or much more apparent when you're looking at the actual painting, but like the world around the figures was done in like 30 minutes, and it's just like these quick like lights, and it's just not as important. And like I was focused more on what are the textures of what I'm looking at than what am I looking at. So this like seascape sort of became more of like just these like flashes of quick light and like moving color all over. um One interesting thing about this piece that I really liked was that me and my friend who were working together at our apartment, like while we were both going to school, we would do things like get like paint markers and these cheap canvases and just like paint whatever. So we had like 15 of these like canvases that already had like these quick drawings on them. And so I was sort of out of canvases and I decided I really like this. I'm going to paint over top of it and like expose it, which is what you're seeing in the center with like the like little like pieces of leaves and like the pink and peach colors. That's sort of just an underpainting. And I think though it wasn't my intention to do that originally, this was more of a like slapstick idea. I really like that idea of like reincorporating something that is already done, which we've seen already with guys like I'd say like Jasper Johns and all that, where like you have like this layering of different graphics. But I think this idea of like having a painting and then painting on top of that, but leaving critical parts of the original exposed, starts to sort of gives you that distortion that would really feed into the work that I'm working on now. So this is just a few pieces of what I've been working on, specifically in painting. um, I'm moving a lot towards digital and trying to see how many different mediums can I compile together other than trying to focus on one and stay like stagnant in my practice. If you want to follow me, if you're interested in like what I've shown you or want to see more, or if you have questions, you can DM me. I'm most active on Instagram and my handle is right here. Feel free to talk to me. I love collaboration with others, and like I really stay in contact with the people from my BFA program because like we all would just like talk about our work together, and that's kind of what I'm looking for here. So, follow me. Like, let's start discussing work, and I'm glad to meet you. Thank you for listening.